Conservative Special Advisor Claire Pearsall. Claire, Kevin, thanks for sticking around. We're going to start off with the I this hour, aren't we, Kevin? Donald Trump's sweary threats on his Truth Social, where, let's not beat around the bush, where he's threatening war crimes, potentially, if Iran doesn't open up the Strait of Hormuz.
Oh, undoubtedly. You know, he's talking about power plants, he's talking about bridges. Those would be against international law, vital civilian infrastructure. But he's making no bones about it. I mean, he makes a lot of big threats and ends up backing down a lot of the time. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was to happen this time as well. But yeah, I mean, I have given it quite a sober coverage of it, I think, because there was two big Trump-related news items yesterday. Obviously, first thing in the morning, there was the airman being rescued, and dramatic rescue operation, actually incredible story, which on any other day would have led all the news. But of course, then Trumped himself with his, as you say, sweary message on Truth Social. So, but now it's a countdown, really, isn't it, to this deadline?
Yes.
And whether or not he sticks to it, or whether dramatically there'll be some sort of reason he will find not to go ahead, because he's done that multiple times already during this war.
And pushed it back and pushed it back. I think we're on like a 2-week deadline for something else as well, which I forget. It's hard to keep up with where he is with these deadlines.
But if you look at Trump and the timescales that he always uses, 2 weeks is a favoured one. And I think it's just because that comes naturally. You think, oh, in a couple of weeks' time. So that's what he does. He gives them 2 weeks. At the moment we had, it was going to be sort of 48 hours, and now we've got, you know, sort of Tuesday evening. And you sort of think you're boxing yourself into a corner because Iran are just going to go, what are you going to do? And they're almost calling his bluff every single time. It's like, you're going to bomb a bridge. OK, we're going to give you a list of places that we're going to retaliate and we're going to bomb instead. And you think, where else can Trump go other than putting boots on the ground? Because I think this is the real danger, and this is what the American support is actually waning for him at the moment, is that nobody wants to send service personnel into a war like this. They don't want to see Americans coming back in boxes with flags. They don't want this. So I think he needs to be really, really careful.
Can he be careful?
No, no.
Well, the whole thing is, it just seems to be spinning out of control for him. You know, he talks a good game about how it's all, well, he's declared victory, goodness knows how many times, and it's going to, we've destroyed, well, the war was won, just like last year when he said he destroyed their nuclear capability, and then strangely had to go and do it all again this year. And yeah, we just don't know. That is, he doesn't know, so how can the rest of the world know? And meanwhile, the economic consequences are being felt around the globe. And for people who voted for Trump because, you know, he... no more wars in the Middle East, no more forever wars, and yet here we are in the middle of a potentially forever war in the Middle East again.
Yeah, just over a month in, and it seems to have no end in sight. Let's move on to the front of the Times. Same story, Claire, but just on that point and sort of how Trump pitched himself this second time around. No foreign wars, to control the economy, to get down the price of eggs, the price of gas. I mean, how damaging is it going to be for him now? I mean, and if you were sitting around in his ear, what would you, if you could tell him what was saying?
Oh, that'll be nice, wouldn't it? No, none of this is going to be good for the American people, because when you put tariffs on other countries, those goods become more expensive for the consumer. And I think that people are waking up to the fact they thought that Trump putting tariffs on other countries was a strong thing to do, and the money was going to come into the US and was make them more prosperous. I don't think they appreciated quite that they, the consumer, were going to have to make up that cost. So there was that. You start looking at the price of just living in general, and it always shocks us. You know, it's the price of eggs in America that always gets us, how expensive they are. But the average American consumer doesn't want that. They don't want a president that is going to keep posting off on social media. They just want their lives. They want that great American dream. They want to be able to have their nice house, their kids, everybody happy, and that isn't happening. And people are now looking at the US saying this isn't the perfect paradise that it is made out to be.
And there's the midterm elections coming in November.
If he goes ahead with them, because there is a horrible thought that he may use the fact of being at war to postpone those midterm elections.
Very interesting you say that. in a podcast I was listening to exactly that, because he kind of joked when President Zelensky said it a little while ago that, oh, you don't have to hold elections when you're at war. And there is that fear.
You wouldn't put it past them, but it would be so incendiary for him to do that. But yeah, you would not.
But he's got the power to do that. And if you're looking down the barrel at some elections not going your way, you're going to use every opportunity available to you.
And his MAGA base still seems pretty solid.
The base do, but he does seem he's growing unpopularity.
With those crucial, the independents, the soft Republican voters, soft Democrat, the ones the coalition that he built to win in 2024. That could be fraying, I think, because of this, because this is not what people voted for.
Let's dive into this on the front of the Times. Interesting story here. Kevin, you're going to pick this up. This is about the Defence Readiness Bill. Yeah,
I mean, so this, I think, typifies the government right now. I think, we're in the middle of... We're on the... If there's, God forbid, but, potentially World War III, the government talks a good game about boosting defence spending, but here is... what could be a tangible example of the government taking defence seriously, the Defence Readiness Bill, which we were told by Lord Coker, the Defence Minister, last year, will come sometime at the beginning of 2026. The Times is revealing now that it won't be until mid-2027 at the earliest. So the King's speech is coming in May, and it's not going to be in it. It's not going to be in the legislative programme for the next 12 months. Now, this is a really serious piece of legislation. It would require key industries to prepare their workforce in the event they were called up for war and give ministers powers to boost the reserve force and also make infrastructure such as energy, network and railways a military priority. So this is, potentially very serious stuff. And given the geopolitical situation, this could be really important. This, unfortunately, could be required. And yet, for whatever reason, they've not done the work. Just incredibly complacent.
Well, I feel like this was quite heavily touted as well at the time as being sort of factories going to be turned over to make sure that we were building enough armaments and stuff to get ourselves ready. Of course, because of the threat from Russia, because of the war in Ukraine. And now we find ourselves in this situation and they're not going to be ready. And
I think it's going to largely come down to cost. There were a lot of brave words from the Prime Minister to say that we want to increase defence spending, which is desperately needed in this country, but then there's no way of paying for it. And unfortunately, I think this is the Labour government's problem, is they're making an awful lot of promises to an awful lot of people with absolutely nothing to back that up financially. I think this is awful because we need that defence bill to have come in. We needed it to be ready to go at the beginning of this year, which is what it was promised. To leave it hanging over until 2027 and not a specific time in 2027 either.
And who knows what the global situation will be like.
Absolutely. We don't even know what that's going to be like in a couple of months, let alone a couple of years, because by the time it comes in, by the time it gets put into the Commons, I think that you're looking at late 27, early into 28. Are they trying to push this into the next election?
This story runs on into page 2. Sorry, I haven't seen page 2 of the Times. What's the MOD had to say about it? Do you have any...
Well, at the moment they're not commenting, obviously, but they're certainly not saying it's untrue, and the Times wouldn't be putting it on the front page if it wasn't true.
Sure about their reporting. All right, move on to this inside the Mail. Claire, you've got this, a picture of Kemi Badenoch as the straight talker, apparently the most popular leader.
Yeah, now this is a bit of good news here for the Conservative Party. So Kemi Badenoch, when she took over, I think there were a lot of doubters as to how productive she was going to be. A lot of the criticism were based around her personality. She was very blunt. But actually, the sort of straight talking is now what is putting people to think of her as a leading light. And I'm really pleased. The Conservative Party has been in the doldrums now for some time. Kemi came in at a time where everybody was almost at each other's throats within the party. It was so divided, it was fractured, we'd taken a beating in the election. And now she seems to have that way about her, the common sense aspect that people want. And she's coming out and saying things and calling them out and actually not being afraid to do so. And I think that is absolutely to her credit. But it's quite interesting. So this is pollsters More in Common have found that she comes out on top with
Ed Davies.
Ed Davey on
next.
-11 and Nigel Farage on -18.
Yeah.
which I think for somebody who was leading those polls is quite some turnaround. So, no, fair play to Kemi. She's really put in the hard work with the Conservative Party that was so incredibly broken.
So, I mean, it's the worst job in the world to be the leader of the opposition.
Yeah.
In politics, certainly, in Westminster. And to do it on the back of hammering in an election makes it even harder. And then you throw in the reform aspect where she's lost lots of MPs to reform, lots of voters, previously Conservative voters are switching to reform. It was a nightmare, really, and she's definitely turned it around. But the proof of the pudding will be in the eating, obviously.
Yeah. It's interesting as well because I think people knew that Kemi Badenoch was a straight talker, but when she came in with no policies, she was waiting, biding her time.
Well, that's changed, hasn't it?
You didn't get it. So was it very strategic then, just to kind of wait? You know who I am, but I'm going to show you who I am really later on when I'm getting a bit serious. It's an interesting strategy.
It is an interesting strategy, although she kind of ditched this idea that we're not going to give you any policies until, was it 2027 she talked about?
Yes.
Close to the next election. She's realised you can't say nothing, especially when you've got Nigel Farage making endless announcements. They needed to.
And I do think that is actually in her favour, that she's managed to realise that wasn't going to hold, and that way of putting off the policy wasn't going to last.
People need to know what she stands for.
Absolutely.
But what's interesting is there's no more talk about a challenge.
Yes.
Whereas everyone remembered the rule is you can't challenge within 12 months, and everyone was like, right, there's this countdown clock. Once she's been in for a year, they'll move against her. No, that didn't happen, and no one's talking about it.
There's no appetite for it at all.
Just under a minute to go. We're going to turn to this in the Mirror about the two-child benefit cap finally lapsing and being lifted. Yeah,
so this is today, it kicks in, and obviously it will be a huge boost to lots of low-income families with more than 2 children, and it will be life-changing, there's absolutely no doubt about it. It will lift hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty. I think what's quite funny about it is that the government now are hailing it and saying this is a great thing, this is what the Labour government's all about. They're rather late converts to this.
That's been dragged into it.
Absolutely. Keir Starmer was explicit before the election, we're not going to do this. Yeah. And it's only under pressure from the backbenches that has actually made them
We've got time for Claire's thoughts on this. I mean, this is a choice, isn't it? I don't have time, sorry, Claire, but I presume you're not with scrapping.
No, I'm not.
We'll get more in the next hour. Kevin, Claire, thanks so much.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?